Hello, my name is A. Joseph Dupre III, and I'm a member of the Network Application and Security Group at Keysight Technologies. Today, I'm going to walk us through the process of how easy it is to deploy the IxNetwork Performance Layer 2-3 Performance Test Tool directly on the AWS public cloud. So IxNetwork 9.0 is available today on the AWS Marketplace. I've actually pulled it up here. If you go to AWS Marketplace, you can search for it and you can subscribe. You'll see the AMIs, the Amazon Machine Images. One of them is for the Windows client so that you can run IxNetwork and configure the test cases. And then the virtual test appliance, sometimes called the VM1, that is your virtual test appliance that has virtual test ports for you to generate traffic. So you can go to those, to the appliance and the client. You can click and get more information, the versions that are available. Today it's 9.0. And you can also see the instance types. We get a lot of questions about where to find the images to run IxNetwork in the public cloud. In the case of AWS, it's in the marketplace, and you can read more about it there. And you can basically subscribe. So if you've never subscribed before, continue to subscribe. You'll need to subscribe before you use the AMIs, whether you use those manually or you use it through one of the configuration wizards, or the other method is CloudFormation template. I'm actually going to use the CloudFormation template today because that's a really easy way to get up and running with a basic environment for IxNetwork, one that you can use if you're within Keysight. You can use it for demonstrations to customers, and if you're a customer of ours, you can certainly go ahead and get up and running quite quickly, especially if you're already familiar with IxNetwork Virtual Edition in its other various forms, whether that be VMware, KVM. This is basically the same IxNetwork Virtual Edition, just deployed directly on the AWS public cloud, Amazon Web Services. So I've already done that. So I've registered my virtual test appliance. You can do that. You know, the very first time it'll ask you to accept the EULA and user license agreement, and you can get details about that and what you have. It is a bring your own license, so you do need to speak to your local Keysight sales team to get the licensing for that image. So you will license it with the exact same license, the same subscription license that you're familiar with from other IxNetwork virtual editions on the private cloud. You can actually use those licenses or request new ones from your salesperson to be able to run that. So it is BYOL and it is available in the marketplace. And if you need to know what the AMIs are, you can either search it in the EC2 launch wizard, or you can also go here after you've subscribed, and you can see the different regions that are supported and the various AMI IDs for that fulfillment. So it is an AMI fulfillment. There is an example of CloudFormation as well. So if you need some samples, you can either get that from support or sales, or you can also search for the CloudFormation deployment example in the marketplace as well. And you can download some JSON JavaScript object notation samples that you can use with CloudFormation. And that's what we're going to use today. So we're going to, having already done and registered in the marketplace, so be sure to do that first, or someone assigned to administer your account will need to do that. Register those, the client and the appliance. And then we're done with the marketplace. We can switch over to the EC2 console here. I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to show you that there's nothing already running. So we're going to build this from scratch, and we're going to do it in an automated fashion and show you how easy it is to get up and running on the order of minutes. And that really accelerates the process, especially if you're either a first-time user of IxNetwork, or you're familiar with IxNetwork, but you haven't had a chance to work with AWS or other public clouds in the past, and you're getting started with either of those. It really gets you up and running. It's also a great reference point if you want to go and move that stuff into your own automation, or you want to build things manually, but you want to have a reference point. it's really great to kind of host a setup. So we're going to do a 2 VM1 setup, as it's called. So that's 2 virtual appliances, 1 test port each, connected to the Windows client, and we'll run test cases basically within a VPC in this demo across 2 subnets. So it will cross the AWS gateway, and you can, of course, attach the test ports to whatever network you need to be able to generate traffic and test a VNF or whatever it is that you're doing in the public cloud. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So we got nothing running. Let's go over to CloudFormation then. So I got a tab here. Nothing here, no stack. So we're going to go ahead and create a stack. So what we got to do is create a stack with a new resource. And I have a template. So again, you can get that from Support or Sales. And then choose a file. I'm going to go ahead. Again, you can also look at some examples on the marketplace for the CloudFormation deployment model. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that from my local file because I've saved a copy. Let's go to our JSONs here. And I'm going to grab a copy of the marketplace example. So 2 VM1s, going to open that up. And again, you can take a look at some examples. You can make your own. You can modify and make them fit the use case that you need. We're going to go ahead and hit next. So it's going to do some basic verification that the template is formed correctly. I need to give it a name. So I'm going to give it keysite-01-IxNetwork on AWS 2-VM1 as an example. VM1 is just a synonym for virtual test appliance. It's just kind of what we call it internally sometimes. And I'm going to give it a user tag. So there's a user tag configuration, which is just giving it unique tags. Everything in AWS is tagged, so you can filter, and especially if you're in a large environment with a lot of different users, you want to be able to quickly hone in on your particular instances. And so there's some identifiers there that you can put in there. I'm going to keep the default client instance size, and you do need to provide an SSH key. So if you've never done that before, I'm just going to show you real quick that it's in EC2 under Network and Security. You can go to Key Pairs. I'll open up a quick tab because I don't want to lose my place here. Just another area in the console. And you can create one or more key pairs, private public key pairs, so that you'll be able to either SSH into a Linux machine, or you can use it to decrypt your Windows password, and we will need to do that because we will need to get into the Windows instance. So you'll need to create a key pair ahead of time before you go into CloudFormation. So just be aware of that. The template is looking for a key pair. I'm going to use one here that's already been created from EC2 console. And then you also need security group configuration. So the nice thing about the CloudFormation template, especially if you're a new user or you're just need to see how we do things with IxNetwork configuration, and then you can go and take it from there. It's really great because in the CloudFormation template, it's not only going to create the client and the 2 virtual test appliances, it's also going to create the virtual private cloud, the VPC in Amazon AWS, and all the subnets and the networking and the stitching together that you'll need to get up and running very quickly. And if you have an existing IxNetwork and IXN CFG file, a test file for IxNetwork that matches your IP addressing, you can either edit it. There's a little helper tool that will let you get some of the IP addresses automatically, but you can basically save your configuration in a matching topology. And that's even great, if you're a customer of ours and you have your customers and you want to show off what your tool can do in the public cloud. So it's a great way to have an IxNetwork configuration combined with your VNF or your device under test, whatever, system under test, whatever it might be, and be able to show off a topology with that. So we have some examples with standalone. This is what this is, a standalone demo. It's kind of pre-canned with IP addresses and such. There are other examples where you can pass VPC IDs and subnets and such, and do more of an attach or an add-on type of configuration. So for this is all standalone. It's kind of already configured for us. It'll stitch everything together, and all we have to do is load a configuration that matches. And then we can be up and running very quickly, which is what we want to show you today. We're not going to drill down deeply into IxNetwork itself. That's the domain of other videos and other training, but we just want to show you how quickly the CloudFormation builds that environment. Now, that being said, the IP addressing of the topology is all controlled, but we do need to pass in one thing for it to do, which is the security group configuration. So in the public cloud, you need to give access, but only access to the people and the ports and the resources that you want to have access to. And we have different security groups for the traffic ports that might be generating all kinds of different traffic versus, the management side of the equation. So this is the inbound IP address. This represents at my local station here wanting to connect to the public cloud. What do I need to configure the security groups for with the proper IP addressing? Again, all of this can be done manually, but it certainly is going to save us a lot of time and hassle getting started by passing this in. So it is a CIDR block, so it is a range. So either pass /32 or the limited number of IP addresses you want. So it's not open. We only want it accessible here. So I'm going to do that. Where did I get that IP address? If you need to, you can go and ask Google, what's my IP address? That will tell you what your actual globally visible address is. Not your local IP address, but you actually need the IP address that Amazon is going to see when something tries to connect, right? When you make a TCP connection or an RDP or whatever, from remote desktop. So that's where you get that. You can just do a quick search on Google. That'll tell you what your browser will know what address that actually is. And so I'm going to pop that in there. It's kind of auto-completed for me in my example. So you can see I left most of it the same. You can, if you need to bump up one of the instance types, if you need a larger instance type, you can do that. I'm just going to kind of go with the default there. Click Next. I don't need to do any extra stuff with the stack. You can tag and do other things that you need to do with CloudFormation, but we're just doing a basic setup, so I can ignore this. Don't need any roles or anything. I already got it. The main screen was that first screen, and then this is just a summary screen summarizing what we're going to do, what it's going to kind of set up here, what I passed in as parameters. You will need to acknowledge the IAM resources, so identity and access management. There are some IAM resources that do get built as a part of this, so you do need to accept that, and then you can go ahead and create stack. And we're actually we're in the period of time just after I believe it was March 31st that Amazon officially switched completely over to the newer GUI in CloudFormation. So this is nice because you'll get to see what that looks like. Some of us are familiar with the previous one. There was a period of transition, but that's up and running now. So we'll show you what that looks like here. All the same structures are here. They're just represented in the updated GUI. You can see, you can filter on the stacks that you want. We're interested in this one, this IxNetwork one, and you can, if you're someone who wants to kind of see what's happening as it goes along, or you're a little impatient, like some of us are, then you can go ahead and click this from time to time and kind of force updates as they come in. The other thing you can do is wait. If you're more patient, you can wait, and there's a little blue little tag that pops up indicating when there's other messages that you need to be worried about in case something fails or continues. You can also look, if you're wanting to see what was built, you can go to the Resources tab, for example, and you can see some of the objects that are either completed or are in construction. Some of those things that you would expect would be a VPC. It would have some number of subnets. So there's a management subnet for command and control. There's test 1 and test 2, because again, we're going to be two subnets sending traffic from one subnet to the other subnet using IxNetwork. And then we're going to go through the AWS gateway, default subnet router there basically. And you can see all the security groups that are being created for different things, for traffic, for management, gateways, so we can access our resources. And let's see, if we go back to events, we may have a refresh here. Okay, good. So you can see interfaces. I'm going to exit this. It keeps popping up. So just got to wait patiently there. Create in progress. We'll get create complete on the whole stack soon. So just be patient there. So those are the interfaces. Probably pretty soon we'll start to see some instances. If we pop back over to EC2 for a second, we can start to see that things are being built here. So they are running. So this is a VM1 and a VM2. It's initializing. And what it has to do is it has to pass status checks. So there's two status checks, one kind of for the host and one for the instance, and to make sure it's up and running. And so it does take some time, and you may have to be patient for those to come up. Here's the client just popped in there because I did a refresh. So that's being built as well. So there is some initialization. So even though it says green running, just be aware it takes some time. Particularly for a Windows machine, there is some additional initialization for the Windows machine to come up before the password has been set. So there's a dynamic password that's set by Amazon for security purposes. These instances come up, when they're launched from the marketplace, they come up, and you have to be able to decrypt that password. It does take some time for that to become available and ready. So we do need to be a little patient there as well. We can pop on back over to CloudFormation, see new events available. So there's the little tag there if you want to step away, get some coffee, and come back. And there it is, create complete. So there's our stack. Everything was built. We even have the elastic IP addresses towards the end there that were created and assigned to our management interface, for example, so that we can actually get into the Windows machine by RDP. Okay, let's pop on back over to instances. If you're like me and you're playing around in AWS, I've gotten in the habit of having certain tabs open so I can kind of quickly bounce back and forth. But you can see it does take some time. Now we have the M4 client and we have the C5Ns for the IxNetwork. Just looking at them a little bit, let's do a little bit of touring around while we're waiting patiently for some initialization to happen. You can see it has a public DNS. We'll use that for RDP a little bit later. And let's see, it's got an ETH0, so there's one interface on that one for command and control. If you go to the VM1s, they have two interfaces, one for command and control. So on that 10.0.10.0 network, and then they have a test network. One of them is attached to the 10.0.2.0/24, and the other one is attached, its test port, to the 10.0.3.0/24. Yep. And then let's take a look at the VPC. So that's one view of it. There's many different ways you can look at it in AWS. If I pop over to my VPC tab, do a refresh, we can see the VPC that was built. You can hover over towards the back of a lot of these properties under description, for example, and hit copy to clipboard. You can pop over to the subnets because you might be interested in see what the subnets are again. I talked a little bit about them, but you can view it that way as well. So if I want to go to subnets, I can filter by a different VPC. There's a lot of different tags and things. You can personalize it however you want. I'm going to paste that in there, and that'll show me my IXIA management subnet, right? 10.0.10.0/24, and then 2 and 3 are the test subnets. So again, all of that, all the heavy lifting done by the CloudFormation template. That's what's so great, especially if you're within Keysight doing a demo for customers, or you're outside of Keysight and you want to learn more about how to deploy this. The CloudFormation template will really tell you a lot, especially if you're already familiar with AWS. You can do that. Okay, let's see where we're at. 2 of them have passed um, their status checks there, and if you want to look more at status checks, you can do that here. It shows you that there's again a system or host, a virtual host that it's on, and that the overall host is good there, and that there's also reachability to the actual instance itself. So again, with the CloudFormation template, we've given the data-driven model of what we want to build here, the network stitching and the instances, and Amazon is bringing up our instances for us. So you'll see that, again, it's typically the case I've seen that the Windows machines take a little bit longer before you get to 2 out of 2. Now, even when you get 2 out of 2, that's great. Still be patient, because what we need to do now is select this client, and we don't know what the Windows password is. That's one of the questions I get sometimes from people that are new to AWS is, what's my Windows password? And my favorite answer is, I have no idea. And the reason is because I don't know what your password was generated by Amazon, and that's a security feature. So we are going to need to get the Windows password, and you can do that under Actions, for example, or you can do that under Connect. And in this case, it came up pretty fast, so it's actually ready to go. So you will need to have your own key pair, right? And proper disclaimers, and I'll mention this again later, that everything you see here is ephemeral. It's all going to be destroyed before this video gets posted. So proper disclaimers there. But just so you have kind of a reference for how to do that, if you're not familiar, what you can do is, let's go over here. Got another one, and this is key pair. So it's also in the EC2 console, and it's under network and security key pairs. You can build key pairs, generate a private public key pair that you can download the key to use, and for SSHing into a Linux machine, or you can use it to decrypt an RDP key. So again, this machine will use it to decrypt the Windows password, but all this stuff is going to go away. These instances will be destroyed. So make note. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the Windows password. I'm going to choose my key pair file. Again, you would have created that ahead of time before making the CloudFormation template, because you do have to associate it with the CloudFormation template. So be aware of that. I'm going to go ahead and grab the region I'm in. So key pairs are by region. Be aware of that as well. That if you have a key pair and it's not working, it might be because it's in the wrong region. And there it is. So it's giving me a password that I can use. Okay. I'm going to close that and the public DNS. You can also go to Connect here, and there's similar stuff here. And I can download the remote desktop file, for example. Get the password here as well, so that's another one you can do. I'm going to go ahead and open that, actually. And it's going to connect here. Close that. And in the other screen, it did say that it's an administrator. It's an administrator password, so you got to paste that in. Okay, I'm just going to stop it from giving me some messages here. And we're in, and that was really easy because the RDP file we downloaded kind of is already ready to go. The security groups, I want to point those out. We'll come back to this in a second. Just one other thing to show you that, again, all the heavy lifting done by the CloudFormation template. So if we go, not VPC, we want to go to EC2 here. If you go to just above key pairs, three up there, security groups, and you can search again for your own. Actually, they have another definition of owner in security groups, but I have a tag here that's filters. That's another good thing with CloudFormation is you can filter things. and add tags to your objects, which the CloudFormation template does. And you can see some of the security groups. There's one for management, for example. So if I click on this guy, oops, actually I'll go back. I like the other view a little bit better. I just need this view right here. You can just use the checkbox if you don't want to drill down further. And then again, those inbound rules, we set that inbound IP address to be allowed. You can see SSH, RDP, which is what we're using, and web if you're trying to get to the VM1s. Is also allowed, but that's a very different one than, for instance, the test group, right? So there may be some access there to be able to get into the web interface, but then there's traffic on the SG, in this case, the security group. So there's some cool tricks where you can basically allow all the objects that are within the same security group to be able to communicate with each other. So in our scenario, our test ports are within the same security group in this test security group, and so they're allowed to communicate on more ports than just a web port, for example. And that's where our traffic will flow when we generate it in IxNetwork. Okay, so just a little slide there. Let's go back to RDP. So we're up here. We should give a little bit of time for IxNetwork to launch here. Make sure I click that properly. This is another great time saver as well. Because it's up in the AWS marketplace, it's already loaded and ready to go. So as long as you pick the proper version of the test appliance and the client in your template, it will deploy things correctly, and everything will be matching, and that's great. And at this point, it's going to basically become IxNetwork Virtual Edition. So we'll run a very basic test, and we'll see how that runs. But it's very similar to other versions of IxNetwork Virtual Edition that you might have used, and other versions of IxNetwork in general. Even on the hardware, the configuration is basically the same for creating your layer 2/3 config. And so we just need to launch that. You will need to license it. So again, as I mentioned, it's a bring your own license, so you do need to be aware of that. You do need to contact your Ixia sales or Keysight sales support to get access to that. You can use the same virtual edition subscription licenses that you're using for other variants like VMware, KVM. That same license will also work. You can either rehost that to an instance directly, or customers will put it on a central license server and make it available to check in and check out that license. So that's one thing we'll have to do here. Again, everything that you see today will be destroyed before this video goes out, so those things will not be available after this recording. Takes a few moments to initialize. While we're waiting for that, I do need to bring a file over just to save time. Again, this is not a deep dive into IxNetwork itself. This is, okay. I might have to reconnect with the drives. Let's see, I might have to close this for a second. Let me do the following. Go back over to instances. Let's do connect again. Download remote desktop. Oh, it's already in my, I can do it here. It's already in this one, the same one. Okay, it's in my download history there. What isn't is I'm going to get the password again one more time, because it's probably not in my copy buffer, but this will be a good reminder here. Grab the right one, decrypt it, grab it, because I can't memorize something that large. Let me make sure I look at the options closely on this RDP. Oh, okay. It's not going to do it, huh? You know what I need to do is I'm going to just do it with remote desktop directly, because I need to get a file over there real quick. Is that the right one? It's not. 133. Okay, let's try it with this. See if that works better. Yeah, okay, there we go. So you might have to edit your remote desktop, for example, file. The default one might not be enough, but it will connect. This should be the right one. And I should still have my password in the buffer. I just want to be able to get, why is that not refreshing? There it goes. Okay, I just need to get a config file just to save time, because again, we don't want to spend time on IxNetwork itself per se, other than to run a basic test, so that you know how to, how it all stitches together real quick. But I'm mostly interested in going to documents here, Ixia, and I just want to drop a config file over there. It'll save us time in the end, I promise. Okay, that looks better. Let's maximize this. Let's go over here. And actually, before I do that, let's do the licensing. Again, this is all going to be ephemeral, but you do need to point it at a license server. And I want to do that, and I'm going to use a temporary license server. That'll go away. I'm going to paste that in there. Otherwise, you'll have to use your Ixia license utility to register the instance directly. But for time's sake, we're going to do that. We're going to open up, again, for time's sake, our sample configuration file. Nope, I don't want to save the previous one. It's empty anyway. This is a clean instance. Again, you don't have to install IxNetwork. It's all been done for you by our engineering team, so that's great as well. You can save yourself a lot of time because the instance is already ready to go. You just have to either create your configs or get them up there, download them from somewhere. And actually, it looks like even my ports are already green because it's already connected, and it's actually connected. It's even checked out the licenses. So if you're familiar with some of the differences between IxNetwork and some of the other products, IxNetwork is more port-based when it comes to licensing, so it does need to reserve the proper number of licenses to be able to cover the port speed. And that's one of the things that you can change. Those ports are green. If we look at our scenario here, we're just going to do a quick test case here. So we have a very basic IPv4 scenario. If we kind of click into it here, into the device groups, let's see if I can get it to show me a little bit more here. What we'll see is that it is configured for those IP addresses. So if I go back to one of my VM1s, my virtual test appliances, I have a primary management address, and then I have a primary test interface 2.12. I also have 9 more for a total of 10. I have 9 secondary private IP addresses, and those can be used again for traffic. And IxNetwork can use those. And if I go back to my remote desktop, the same thing is true on the server side. So you can see there's a range there, right? And then the same thing on the server side. Okay. There is also a tool. You do have to enable it. My configuration is already ready. You do have to enable it. It's not on by default, but if you go into preferences, there is under protocols, towards the bottom here, there's an option to enable cloud tools. It will need a reboot of the IxNetwork GUI, so I'm not going to do it right now. But that little tool will help match your IP addresses. If you don't want to have to put them in yourself, that will reach out and configure the port interfaces. So in my case, there are 10 IP addresses. The only reason that's disabled is because it's a brand new instance, but just be aware of that. And we've got that. The gateway is .1. So if you're familiar with AWS and you're reading the documentation, you'll see there's about 4 or 5 reserved addresses, one for the gateway, one for the DHCP server, the broadcast, and I think there's 1 or 2, if memory serves me, that are reserved for Amazon use, for example. So you'll see that where did that .1 come from? That's the default subnet router, the default gateway in AWS. So there's a .1 on the 2 network, and there's a .1 on the 3 network. And so if we start up protocols, just like any other IxNetwork virtual edition, go ahead and start that up, and we can resolve the gateway there, and that should come up. Give it a moment here to get the packages on the ports, and boom, that's green. All right, so that's very fast, and you can drill down into the other protocol stats and things you need to, the Ethernet and such, but you can see that the gateways are resolved, which is great because that means we can generate traffic. And so we can go over to traffic items here now, and we have a traffic item configured already. We just need to refresh it so we can regenerate it with the proper thing. I'm just going to go in there for a second so you can take a look at some of it. Again, we're not going to get too much into the weeds on IxNetwork itself, so do reach out to others on the layer 2-3 team to get more help there, and your local sales team can help you. The sales engineers can help you with that configuration. But just a couple of highlights. Basically, it's using the 2 IP topologies, so the 10 addresses on one port and the 10 addresses on the other port, creating a bidirectional traffic between them. The frame size, in this case, I'm going up to 9,000, which is the jumbo frame, so I got a fixed jumbo frame size, and I'm going to try to do 100% line rate. Okay, so just some basic stuff you can validate, so again, I defer to others for the details on how to get your traffic items running, but in terms of basically you create traffic items based on the scenario topologies that you create. So if you have your IP addressing in your system there, you can create traffic. I'm going to hit cancel. I am going to just regenerate one more time out of habit, and then I'm going to apply traffic. There are some warnings, but those are typical warnings that you get on the virtual edition. Just telling you certain features. There are certain features of the Ixia hardware that you will not have in a virtual environment, just because of the nature of the PHY and such. Okay, we have a view there. Looks like that's been applied. So we got our stats ready, and it's basically indicating that we're ready to start traffic. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start blasting some traffic. And there's the GUI refreshing. Now, I wanted to point this out because I'm sending a lot of traffic, but I'm not receiving much. Okay, good. We actually have to do one more step. So I wanted to show that actually as a debugging step if you're not getting traffic. So one of the things you do need to do is there is one extra step there, and this is why the security groups have HTTPS open, is we do need, when you're using these, the same VM1 is actually used with another product that we have called IxLoad, which is your application performance testing tool, layer 4 through 7. If you think of it that way, what we want to do is we need to go back to our environment. So I wanted to show that. So we're sending a lot of traffic, but we're not receiving. That's because we need to put in 9.0, we are in a beta of our new traffic engine, and you do need the new traffic engine in order to be able to get significant throughput. One of many things that the new traffic engine does is enable DPDK. So these instance types, the C5Ns, the C5 family as well, there are many instance types. You can go on Amazon and you can read the documentation for the various instance type families, but what you will see is that some of them are SRIOV based, 10 gig type of interfaces. Some are based on the Annapurna 25 gig model, those ENAs, elastic network adapter, you've probably seen that terminology. So for the higher speed Ethernet, if you will, as we think of in the private cloud and in the hardware world, for those in that world, they think of that in terms of higher speed Ethernet. And so your 10 gig adapters, your SROV, for example, only takes you so far. The ENA, for example, in AWS is how they solve the problem of higher Ethernet. And so we do need to turn on some features on our virtual test appliances, our VM ones, with this traffic engine. In 9.0, it is in beta. In a future release, that will be the normal traffic engine. So we want to make sure we do that. If you don't put DPDK on, for example, and some of these other optimization features, you're not going to get the kind of performance that you would expect out of these types of instances in the public cloud. So let's go ahead and do that. One easy way to do that is to go and grab the public DNS of each virtual test appliance. So the client had a DNS and public IP address, elastic IP, so that we can get into it for RDP. These have a web interface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over one of these tabs here, and I'm going to paste and go. And you might need to actually throw in, let's see if I have to throw in HTTPS there. Yeah. Okay. And then click Advanced, Proceed, pass that certificate error. That's common with the other ones. So just go ahead and do that. We'll need to do this for each one. So we're going to log into the web platform here on the VM1. I'm going to use the default admin password, so consult either support or the user guides for the default password. It's the same as other virtual editions. I'm going to go ahead and log in there. It's going to give me some privacy notices. Probably a good idea out of best practice to go ahead and change that password. We're already restricting things by security group, but we'll go ahead and change the password there. Okay, let's go back home. Now this is under, we want to go, that was under administration, my account. This is under chassis. So you can click on the chassis service. If you're familiar with other applications like Breaking Point, you've probably seen the same kind of web application framework that a lot of the tools share. So you can log in a very similar way. And we need to do this so that we can turn on the traffic engine. For a lot of times we have to maintain backwards compatibility with, a lot of customers have automation and prior configs and things that they're doing. And because configs that you use in other versions of the virtual edition, other variants, can be used here, some of the configs can be used. Now, again, in the public cloud, if you're not aware, you can't do every single protocol that you're used to in IxNetwork on the hardware or even in the private cloud. You are restricted in what you can do. So you're typically restricted to above layer 2. You're not going to be able to do all your multicast protocols and all your broadcast types of scenarios. So you're going to be a host in the other sense of the word in the public cloud, an end client or an end server. So keep that in mind as well. But we do want to get the most performance that we can, so we need to be configured. So the instance type supports, higher speed Ethernet and DPDK and such. We just need to configure our load modules in the beta in 9.0 for the higher speed Ethernet. So you go over to CLI is the easiest way to do that. You could SSH in and you can get the information from the user guide, and it's the same command line interface. I just find it easier to get here. You can also look at some of the other information about the chassis if you want. And I'm just going to do question mark. I'm going to just page down here, space down to the bottom because it happens to be the last one in this version. I'm going to do a show, and it tabs out if you want, after a little bit. traffic-engine-dbk status. Again, this is for 9.0. This won't be necessary in future releases. I don't have an exact idea of which exact release that is, but that will be something where this step won't be necessary. But this is a 9.0 video, so just be aware that this for now, this step is required. So you'll notice it's disabled. Again, which is for IxLoad and also backwards compatibility with older configurations. I'm going to do a set traffic engine DPDK status enable. Type yes. It's just warning me that this is going to reboot that virtual appliance. So while that's happening, we are going to lose connectivity to it, and I do need to go to the other one. So let's go to AWS. Let's get the other one. Let's get its public DNS. And let's go ahead and I need to open a new tab. Let's go ahead and paste in there. And I probably, again, have to go to make sure I throw HTTPS in there. Proceed past. Okay, so again, default admin password to start with. Again, that's the other great thing about the marketplace is you get the exact, it's true of many virtualization snapshots and capabilities. Again, you get the same clean instance type every time. It's great that way, so you know what you're getting. I'm going to go ahead and again, just good practice here would be to change the admin password on it before we issue our, whoops, what did I do? Probably have fat fingers there. Let's try again. Yep, okay, there we go. Go back home. Again, that was under this gear for administration. In this case, it's my account. And then we go to the chassis service here. Now, the good news is this is the first time. So the CloudFormation did almost all of the heavy lifting. There are some things in this version that we have to do if we're using it with IxNetwork, which we are in this case. That's what this video is about. We have other videos on the Ixia training channel that I'll briefly point out at the end for IxLoad. So there's a couple extra steps here, and that's why I wanted to record this one so people could see those extra steps. And again, that's if you're focused on performance. If you're just doing some functional stuff, it won't really matter so much. But if you're interested in the higher performance, you do need to set things up in 9.0. And same thing, if I show, again, we would expect this to be disabled by default, and then I can set traffic engine-dbk status enable, and that will do the same thing. Ask me to reboot, yes. Okay, let's go back over to IxNetwork, and for those of you that are familiar with IxNetwork, you can see some things are going on here. The other one's already come back up again, and we'll have to wait patiently. It's orange because the other one's in a kind of an unusable state as it starts to shut down services and reboot. And so we'll give it a moment to do that. And we will have to restart protocols. But I did want you to see that because it's a common, we try in these videos to point out, common questions, frequently asked questions, or gotchas that you might need to be aware of when you're first getting started. Once you've done this, once you've put that blade into that mode, you don't have to do that again. It will stay in that mode until it's been explicitly changed, at least in 9.0. Okay. So up in green, that's great. Let's go back to our scenario. Let's start up our protocols and get all the ARPing again. Comes up really fast. And then again, let's go to our traffic item and let's just regenerate it one more time just for the sake of argument. Apply it. Make sure our stat views come up because some things get destroyed in between sessions. So I want to pop those back up. Okay, there's our summary. Let's give this another run. And there we go. That looks better. So that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for much closer to the line speed there. So we're getting what we're sending. So that's really important. DBDK has a lot of effect on the data plane capability of virtual instances, be they private or public cloud. And we want to see, if we're focused on performance, then we want to be able to see those numbers in both the send side and the receive side. And, again, this is IxNetwork, so you can drill down further if you want to get into the statistics even further. You might drill down into the traffic item, what's going on there. And you might drill down further into like the receive ports, because this is bidirectional traffic right now, so we are sending and receiving on both VM1s. And you can send some traffic there, and you can see that the loss percentage is extremely low. And that's, again, the advantage of all the performance acceleration that's available these days on these instances in the public cloud. So we've really come a long way in a short period of time, from virtualization and virtualization being a novelty to it being a very high performant capability, and seeing that same kind of progression go even faster and ramp up even faster in the public cloud. And of course, this is IxNetwork Virtual Edition, so you can have additional ports of traffic, and you can aggregate those ports together if you need even more throughput and performance. So just want to summarize real quick. I'm going to go ahead and stop this traffic. So you can do your measurements there. I just want to summarize that again. The first part of this was that we downloaded a CloudFormation template, edited it, made it our own, passed in some parameters. Again, this is a simple 2 VM1 port-to-port test case with IPv4 traffic, and we're doing that within a VPC across 2 subnets through the Amazon gateway, and seeing that traffic pass through, we've deployed the VM1s, which are Linux-based, and the client. We used the SSH key to decode the passwords. We logged into the VM1s and we put them into performance mode if we need them in performance mode, so we can get the most out of our instance types and turn on some of the capabilities there, and then ran our test cases in the public cloud. So I just want to show you one more thing real quick before we wrap up. Do go to the Ixia blog, company blog there. That's a great place to get all kinds of different guidance and topics. So if you want a written write-up of some of the things that, some of the test cases and use cases that are in the public cloud or in the private cloud, you can go there and you can click on here. You can get different topics there. I also strongly encourage you to go to the Ixia Training TV channel on YouTube. That is where you will find this video when it's published, as well as other videos on all kinds of different topics to help you get started with our test tools, both the network test tools and the network visibility tools. If you're interested in, for example, other tools that we have for testing in AWS, you can search AWS and you can see, for instance, our application and security tool, Breaking Point Virtual Edition. That's there. If you're looking for things on other public clouds that we support, like Azure, for example, you can do that as well. So I encourage you to go to the Ixia Training TV. Subscribe and ring the bell so that you can get other helpful training videos. I hope this training video was helpful to you. That's pretty much deployment and running a basic test of IxNetwork in the public cloud on AWS. Wrapped it up in a nutshell. Thank you for watching.